The mercury has jumped now to around 36.5 degrees Celsius outside. The heat's already claimed 4 casualties for the day. Well, the rest of the cars have already claimed 4 casualties. We'll have 32 starters now for race 3. Mark Scaife and Jason Bright will start on the front row of the grid. Kelly and Murphy on the second row. Bernard and Richards on the third. And Tander and Bargwanna positions 7 and 8.
Marcus Ambrose back alongside Brad Jones, who's doing a great job this weekend in the Aussie Male Ford. Glenn Seaton and Paul Wheel, who's done a terrific job in the K&J Ford, rocketing up the order. Now, talking about movers in that last race, Neil Crompton, another one, so too Wayne Gardner.
Yeah, they had great races, race 2. They worked their way through a very congested field at times. Down the back of the grid we go, and positions 21 through to 24. Track, Max Wilson, Larry Perkins, Cameron McLean, another 8 starters to fill the back. Jason Richards, Stephen Ellery will be there. Michelle Helix Ford of Paul Radicic in 27th. Stephen White, John Bow, Stephen Johnson, Paul Morris and Craig Lowndes, after having his engine go on him in race 2, will start from the last position.
Baz?
Well, it may have been 36 degrees, Matty, but now it's 38.5 degrees ambient and 49 degrees track temperature. So I hope you're happy up there in your air-conditioned luxury.
So we've got Jason Bright alongside Mark Scaife. They've been like this from the word go this weekend, but just swapping different positions. We've got teammates on rows 1, 2 and 4. HRT on 1, Kmart on 2. And in 4, it's the Gary Rogers Motorsport crew of Tander and Bargwanna. The race analysis has us doing 100 kilometres for this race.
Crucial thing there, Matthew, is the pit window between laps 2 and 25 and just what state everyone's tyres will be in after the 2 races so far this weekend.
Okay, here we go again. 4 Holdens at the front of the grid. Marcus Ambrose, starting from position number 9. We'll be on board with him. We'll be on board with a host of drivers to give you every angle. Here we go again. So, Bright and Scaife get us underway. Carl Tander had a look up the inside. That looked like Neil Crompton trying to make a move. Let's see who pulls across first. It's almost a repeat performance from races 1 and 2. And it's Jason Bright taking the initiative up to his teammate. He switched it on him. Jason Bright's got hold of Mark Scaife. And then the 2 Kmart Commodores holding position through turns 1 and 2. Up they go through the S's through to turn 3. Now the right-hander that is turn 4. This is the one where they all got in trouble in the first race of the day. Thankfully, no trouble to speak of here.
Looked like a bit of contact early on between Marcus Ambrose and Stephen Richards, who's up the road ahead of him. Those 2, in fact, now splitting the Valvoline Cummins Commodores. We welcome to the commentary box for this one as well, John Faulkner, who unfortunately is a non-starter in the final race. But John, everyone's away cleanly, unlike the first race, which, or the last race I should say, which saw your car bow out.
Yeah, look, I wish they were that polite in turn 3 when I went through there. It was a hell of a gap this time.
John, it must have just made your head spin. I mean, that early on in the race, you're still trying to settle into the car and keep your nose clean, and just all of a sudden everything went haywire.
Yeah, look, they really started shuffling probably into turn 1 and it really hadn't sorted itself out by the kick, and there was a bit of dust in front of me. I sort of lifted a bit and everyone around me spread, and it was Kelly right in front of me sideways to the corner, so nothing to do. Just whack from there, and a few guys trailed on the back of me. Good
battle going on between the Ford of Marcus Ambrose and Stephen Richards in the Castrol Commodore. Richards doing what I guess he's rightly entitled to do, and that's defend, John, but gee, there's a lot of pressure being applied from Ambrose.
Oh, look, at this stage, they're all jostling for position. They've just got to claim a couple of spots in these opening laps when the tyres are all crisp. Once the race progresses, everyone thinks, right, well, that's my position, let's hold it down, get some points, get in the pit stop and get out again and finish.
You always hear them talking about tyre, getting them warm, getting them up to the maximum temperature. They'll start at around 25 degrees and then they want to work at an optimum temperature of around 90 degrees. Now this is a replay of the start on board with Mark Scaife, so keep your eyes on the right-hand side and watch what Jason Bright does to his teammate. Thank you very much. A drag along the main straight into turn 1, and Bright just got the power cut so he whacks it on the brakes at the 100-metre mark and takes the lead through. So Jason Bright is our leader, but Mark Scaife has set the fastest time after lap 2 of 1:10.5.632. Todd Kelly, Greg Murphy all hold their positions. David Bernard, start 10, Stephen Richards, Marcus Ambrose, Jason Bargwanna and Glenn Seaton make up our top 10.
Just to get back to that start we saw there from Mark Scaife and the ripper of a start for Jason Bright. How much of an art is that to try and get a V8 supercar off the line quickly?
Well, look, it's extremely difficult. They use what they call a limiter start, so they're starting on a percentage of throttle that when the car's stationary, the slightest slack in the drivetrain, they're risking instant wheel spin. So really it's the one that reads that red light when it changes and off they go. If you just hesitate that moment, you'll lose that launch of one length of a car.
Good job being done by Cameron McConville there at present, and we should bear in mind that he had some clutch problems in race 1. In fact, had to do the pit stop with the car in neutral and sort of whack it in gear and fire out as best they could, so he worked his way up the order very well. Pit window now open and Bright making his way in. Grant?
Hey, Jason.
Few of the teams are saying that it's better to take a later stop. They reckon because you don't waste a set of tyres by coming in early and your second set isn't pushed for too long. Brad Jones jumped up several positions using that strategy and actually lapping faster than Mark Scaife. Let's see if anybody else follows, but most of them are coming in now.
And let's see, this could be crunch time again for Marcus Ambrose. The messy pit stop that he had in race 2 effectively cost him any chance of putting the pressure on the Red Rockets up the front. Oh, that's very, very quick. You see them pump their fists in the air. They nailed that one, and so did the Commodore boys up the front.
Good job, boys.
Much better stop from Ambrose that time around, and it's a different story to the previous race, John. He'll now be able to stay in touch with the Holden Racing team. He lost a stack of track position and time in the second race of the weekend, didn't he?
That's so frustrating for the driver. I was watching that at that time we were out, and there's just a slight fumble by the crew there, and all the advantage he had was lost. He came out in that middle pack, and that's where you stay.
Jason Bright leads him out. He just set an electrifying lap time in the top 10 shootout. He did absolutely everything right. A 107 he went into in the top 10 shootout, and he really had everything all together. The car was obviously set up very well. There was plenty of pace. He just went out and blew them away. Had them all shaking their heads up and down pit lane. Marcus Ambrose is doing a good job. You can see that there's a bit of tubing sticking out the right-hand side of the Pertec Ford, and that's his cooling system, one of the cooling systems employed here. It just funnels air in there because any air that's coming through is going to be a lot cooler than the air in the cockpit. Car number 35 moves out. Jason Bargwanna in and out of pit lane, and Radicic is up on the jacks as well, so a tyre change here. They're all getting their compulsory pit stops out of the way. Remember, it's only one compulsory pit stop. They don't need to do They only need to do tyres in round 4. John Bowles taking a little excursion, managed to dodge the signage on the side and gets it back on the track without too much trouble around turn 10.
At this stage in the weekend, John, how much of a factor would tyre wear be for lots of the teams? I mean, they've only got an allocation of 10 tyres for the weekend, so at this point in time, the guys that are making early calls for pit stops, will they have tyres, do you reckon, that will last the distance?
Be that if you came in at, say, lap 2 or 3, that means they've put on their worst tyres. So they're going to have obviously a good set to run to the end, but someone that's going to stay out for 15 and 20 odd laps has obviously got 2 good sets of tyres, and they'll make a huge inroads in that.
What about the John Bowles Ford Precision driving team there? He's just cut straight through those 2 signs.
Yeah, I just had a look at a majority of the guys' tyres. They're in remarkably good condition. I'm in the Castrol pit at the moment, and the tyres that are out there look pretty new. And I was looking at Scaife's lot he's going to put on at his pit stop, and they really are standing up very well.
So all the movement taking place very early on. As soon as the pit window opened, basically, Jason Bright slotted straight in, and that led a procession throughout pit lane. Mark Scaife on the road is our race leader at the moment. He's yet to pit. Yet to come in.
That's interesting, because I would have perhaps expected Mark to maybe adopt an early strategy. Historically, we've seen a lot of the front-running teams go for that early pit stop strategy. Now Mark comes in, so...
Hey, mate, speed button and not too much throttle. Be nice and easy on the brakes. Jason locked it up and lost a lot of time. Just be gentle on the brakes.
That's Robbie Starr talking to Mark Scaife there. And I guess the main thing, John, is that... the concern over the a possible safety car means that you've got to elect to pit early like this, don't you?
Lap times that they're reducing at the moment, they haven't got anywhere near the pace in that earlier race today, so obviously they've got their roller tyres on.
Yeah, pretty straightforward, nice and, oh yeah, just trying to get the air jack out the back of it, but no, pretty straightforward. I don't know what the time was, but it definitely did look slow.
It was around about 8 seconds, and Marcus Ambrose did an 8.8, and they were pumped after that. He did an 8 seconds, and he gets out in front of his teammate.
So there's the telling factor. He gets out in front of teammate Jason Bright. So maybe what Robbie Starr was alluding to on the radio there to Mark Scaife about the brake lock-up coming into pit lane. Maybe the stop was a little slower. We've got to bear in mind that Bright's been out there a lap on newer tyres. His teammate Mark Scaife hasn't. So an interesting scenario developing here.
Yeah, and the last lap that Jason Bright did was the fastest lap of this race, a 1:09.08.02. So we could see some interesting pressure being applied by Jason Bright in car number 2. Around the hairpin they go. Behind him is actually Hidden Valley. It's a cabin, if you like, where they go around, a big amphitheatre. Lets the V8s roar past the terrace hairpin, tense on the left. And here they go through sections, turns 8 and 9, and it brings them back down to the main straight. So Jason Bright, coming off an incredibly quick lap, is now trying to hunt down his teammate. Here's Craig Lowndes in the pits.
Pit lane speed.
That's Oscar Fiorinato, crew chief for the 00 Motorsport Ford of Craig Lowndes, talking to him just to remind him about the pit lane speed limit. And word we hear from pit lane is that Greg Murphy in the Kmart Commodore is due in this time around as well. Status quo for the Holden Racing Team duo. Scaife in front of Bright. Murphy is the leader on the road at the moment, but due to pit soon. Brad Jones, maybe he's rolled the dice along with Mark Larkin. They are 2nd and 3rd on the road, John, possibly going for a strategy that's a little bit different to everyone else's at this stage.
Well, look, I think they've surprised a lot of guys out there up there this weekend, and I mean, staying out, it is rolling the dice. It's an awful risk to take, and they're making the best while they can. Their lap times are good.
Murphy for a pit stop now. The last one, Todd Kelly, his teammate, was a cracker. That's a good one too. They elected to bring in Todd first because he was holding up Greg Murphy.
What about that?
That is lightning fast.
7.7 seconds for the Kmart Racing Team. So Murph had a bit of a tough one in race 2 for the weekend, but in the 3rd and final one, that's quick.
Almost a miracle to see this car back out on the ground and running. Russell Ingall got caught up in the same tangle that you did, John Faulkner, but they managed to bash the car back into shape, and literally that's what Russell said to us. They had sledgehammers and all sorts of things flying in the Castrol pit there. Gets the new tyres on and away he goes.
When you're doing a pit stop like that here at Hidden Valley, some of the things that the drivers tend to talk about is it's that stationary time when you're in the car and there's no actual airflow coming through it to keep the driver cool. The cabin temperature actually goes up in that situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, it's commonly called heat soak, and all the metal in the car just, ambient temperature just goes up, and then as you take off, it's then like a fan. The wind coming past the bare metal, it's just worse.
A lot of people don't realise that heat on. Now, Paul Redisic has come into the pits. Dramas for the 18 Ford. We'll try and figure out what that is, but the point I was going to make was the heat here actually can sap around about 40 horsepower from the car, can't it? The ambient temperature.
Conservatively, it's like running a restricted plate engine in NASCAR. I mean, it feels to me like 100 horsepower. The thing that sparks you up is that everybody else is in the same boat. It's the same air going in the same engine.
So 10 laps gone out of 35, and it's 1 versus 2. Mark Scaife has wrestled the initiative back off his teammate, but the leader on the road at the moment is Brad Jones. He's yet to pit. Wayne Gardner is also yet to come in. All of these guys, in fact, have yet to pit. When they reshuffle, Mark Scaife will re-emerge, assuming he stays where he is, in front of his teammate Jason Bright. So this is race 3 of round 4 at Hidden Valley. Take a look at the Shell Helix race score. It tells the story of those who've already come in. 100 kilometres, our final race of the day. You're on your home of motorsport. Not only are the Kmart cars all settled in for a pretty good round here overall at Hidden Valley, but the Kmart crew is showing that they've got what it takes to put their drivers in every conceivable position to get up the front. When Greg Murphy came in, his team did a 7.7 second pit stop, and that makes a hell of a lot of difference out on the track, because the seconds that you lose in here are multiplied, magnified by the time you get back out on the track, and Cameron McConville will be feeling that. Every second that you sit around in here feels like a minute
He had clutch problems in the last race, Matthew, so I'm just wondering if the Lansvale race team have had that problem resurface. Looking in the back of the car, John, what could that be about, maybe?
Well, obviously it's in the rear, so it's probably a fuel problem, I'd say. There's not much else you get in there. There's no tow rope or crank handle.
Grant?
Yeah, Cameron hasn't really been saying too much on the radio at this stage, but they are playing around with the battery terminal back in the back section of the boot, so it doesn't look like it's a gearbox at all.
So power, the problem for Cam McConville, and that's a shame because he's been doing well up until now.
One of the better electrical cars there. That's Tony Longhurst, sandwiched in between Scaife and Bright. Poor old Paul Radicic didn't make the grid for the Sunday races. Here's John Bower getting in a little bit of trouble in turn one, just on the run off there.
Now that's the second time that we've seen him have trouble, John.
Yeah, look, I think he's obviously playing around a bit with brake bias here, because every time he's left the track, it's from the rear brakes have locked up.
Larry Perkins and Tony Longhurst coming down into the bottom two now. Is there something down in that part of the track? Was there contact there?
I don't know, sometimes they go out in sympathy.
Out in front, a familiar story. Cars 1 and 2. Now Wayne Gardner, Simon Wills, Cameron McLean, Craig Baird and Tony Longhurst are yet to pit. So they're all the cars in front of this group. Marcus Ambrose is currently in position 5 when you take into consideration the pit stops. And behind him is his teammate David Bernard.
We are hearing word from pit lane of some sort of drama. Someone is letting or dropping some oil of some kind.
Marcus, let him pass.
That's interesting. That's Paul Forgy talking to Marcus Ambrose, and the word was to let David Bernard through. So the two Stone Brothers Racing teammates.
Paul Morris has gone off at turn 2. That's very interesting, isn't it? And Marcus just checked there. He said, let him pass. Yes, let him pass. So Marcus Ambrose makes way for David Bernard to go through. They're currently in now positions 4 and 5 together, 5 and 6 in fact, and Paul Morris is stuck out there.
You were asking about somebody dropping some oil. It could have been Paul Morris, because he came in and they tried to do something up, but he went out, and if he's got off, he's probably got off on his own oil.
Fluid also from Cameron McConville's car. He broke an alternator belt, and that's pumping fluid out across pit lane as well. But for John Bowe, some concerns inside his car. He's complaining he doesn't have a cool suit working. That means he'll be hotter than any other driver wearing extra layers of clothing.
What are your thoughts on cool suits, John?
I think they should be compulsory, blokes his age and my age.
do they work, and what happens at sort of this stage of the day? Is there ever a worry that if they don't work properly, which could be John Bowe's particular example, that it could actually create more drama than the cooling that it's trying to do?
I think it's no secret that the older you get, the harder it is to establish a body temperature that's comfortable enough to go racing. But poor old JB without a cool suit, I mean, me and him have been wearing them longer than probably any drivers out there, but they're just so essential. It's the only, my core temperature would be just into the critical level without it, and we've been monitored by the Institute of Sport this weekend in our first run, and I was half a degree off being serious, and that's pretty normal.
What sort of information have those guys up here at the Northern Territory Institute of Sport found this weekend, do you think?
Probably not a whole lot about myself, but certainly in general, athletes, the core temperatures, 38.5, 39 starts to get serious, and we swallowed some little probe with a transistor in it. It goes down in the intestine, and then they monitor all that as you're going around and look at heart rate and things like that, and how much fluids we're drinking, and we're expected to lose 2.5 kilos and 3 gate litres of fluid.
Tony Longhurst was caught up in a battle there with Todd Kelly just before Longhurst peeled off into pit lane. That allowed Greg Murphy to close up on his Kmart Racing teammate. But gee, as they came down to that final left-hander, which brought them onto the front straight, things bunched up a little bit. Now this is another incident.
Yeah, Jason Richards and Paul Romano doing a little bit of a dance. Around turn 4.
Both living to fight another day, which is good news. Now, with things starting to settle down in terms of pit stops, as Matthew mentioned, Mark Scaife leading the way from teammate Jason Bright. But there's a gap of about 5.6 seconds between the second Holden Racing Team Commodore and Todd Kelly, who's in third. There you can see the gap to Greg Murphy. Bernard has gotten around his teammate Marcus Ambrose. Gee, I'd like to know what that's about. It might be that David potentially has a better opportunity to score more points for the weekend, but Marcus is obviously in a good position in terms of the overall championship, so I'm not quite sure why those two orders were perhaps enforced.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And it's sure to fire up a few bar-side arguments and debates, I guess. We've seen it in world motorsport over recent weeks, certainly not to that level, and there is a long way to go in this race. I mean, that occurred on about lap 15, and they were in a pretty comfortable position, those two cars. Maybe David Bernard's got a lot more pace in that Caltex Haviland Ford Falcon than Marcus Ambrose at the moment, because he's pulled
clear in the background there, can't you? Yeah, so Bernard doing a good job. We should make mention of the fact that team has a new evolution or engine build, if you like, in that car this weekend. David had a very successful test with the team, was fastest in a test session at Queensland Raceway last Thursday before they packed the car in the transporter and sent it up here to Darwin.
Craig Lowndes in more than a spot of bother. That Ford Falcon has caught on fire, and they've just got there and just put it out. Now, Lowndes has been out of the car for around about a minute or so. We don't really know what happened there. He
went off during the ad break there, Matthew, and then all of a sudden, not quite sure what may have caused the fire, but take a look at this for a move through the pack.
Stephen Richards taking on Marcus Ambrose, and we mentioned that there might be some sort of problems with Marcus's car. Look at this. Stephen Richards just muscles his way up the inside of Ambrose and gets through him going around turn 2.
Yeah, why that was because someone went off in front of Marcus and he lost his momentum, but as you see now, he's got back in front of Stephen again. And what you were saying earlier on, Marcus let David Bernard pass so David could have a bit of a go at the so he could have a bit of a go at the Kmart car. And now Marcus got back in front of Stephen, and Stephen's back in front of Marcus again there, so it's all fun and games.
Definitely. Just wonder if he'll be able to maintain that, Baz, or whether the Pertec Ford maybe does have a drama. We were monitoring some of the lap times.
I've just spoken to Ross, and I've spoken to Paul Foggy, and he said there's no drama with the car.
Oh, that's good.
It's just the tyres are knackered, so that's the problem, technical problem.
Talking about some good shakers and movers in this round. Paul Wheeler's kept that effort from the previous race going. He's in 12th in the K&J Thermal Ford. And we look at the likes of Max Wilson up to 15th in the Better Electrical Ford. Neil Crompton doing another good job, 16th in car 27. There's Crompton there. Larkham behind him. There's Simon Wills. Wills started further down the order for the weekend, but has moved up in the second race. And another one to be pushing on.
Yeah, and that's the damage on the front of Simon Wills' car. You might have seen a little bit of tape there just sort of flickering off. That was as a result of that incident that we had on the very first lap of race 2. He was another of the casualties, but nowhere near as bad as the rest of the guys. Max Wilson in car 65, Neil Crompton, car 27. That's 16th position.
He would have been pretty fired up coming into the Sunday races. Geez, had a tough weekend in practice on Friday. He only turned 3 laps because the car was running on 7 cylinders in the sprint race yesterday. Unfortunately, the power steering had a massive drama, and Crompton said that the car was basically wrestling, the steering wheel was wrestling itself out of his hands. So thankfully today things going much, much better for our own Neil Crompton.
13th in race 2 for Cromley. Of course, he had to come through pre-qualifying at Eastern Creek. He posted his best performance of the year, 12th overall. And he'll be one who's glad to see the back of pre-qualifying because the stress toll that it takes on the body of these drivers is quite remarkable, quite incredible. In fact, to just see them talk about the stress that they had to go through just to get their cars onto the grid. For those who didn't make it, there's nothing much you could do. But thankfully, that situation's all being cleaned up now. And the result is that you've got a guaranteed starting grid of 36 cars here, 34 in Canberra and 32. Paul Wheels had to pull across on the main straight as he comes into the entry of pit lane.
So problems for Paul Wheel of some kind in the K&J Ford. The question I was going to ask John Faulkner was just the change in the rules and the introduction this weekend of a reduction in the way they use those pit booms. How has that affected your team, and what did you think of it?
Oh, look, it was a necessary thing to get to 36 cars here, and you know, I mean, the most sensible decision that's ever been made by Vesco this year is to abolish pre-qualifying, and we were going to move heaven and hell to get 2 cars to share a boom if that's what it took to get 36 cars here, and it's working fine. I mean, it just means that he can't pit when I'm in, and vice versa, and whoever was in the lead position on the circuit has the right of way in their pit stop, and that's well worked out before the introduction.
Baz?
Yeah, the problem with Paul Wheel's car has lost all its drive. No drive whatsoever. He's just sort of coasting into the pits and coasting down the pit lane. So definitely a retirement, no doubt.
That's a shame, because they'd worked very hard on the setup of that car. They had basically been fine-tuning it, and he felt that coming into the Sunday race. Now that's Greg Murphy. He's gotten past Todd Kelly. So a switch between the teammates. And wonder how that's happened or where it may have happened, but Murphy definitely on a charge. There's David Bernard in the background. So the decision by Stone Brothers to perhaps let him pass Marcus Ambrose and chase the Kmart cars, paying dividends. Now, safety car on the circuit. We'll try and find out why the safety car has come out. There you go. You can hear Robbie Starr talking to Mark Scaife there in the Holden Racing Team Commodore, telling him to keep the tyres clean. John, what would be the reason behind that?
Oh, look, if you get offline when the cars slow down, obviously you're looking at tyre temperature. You should want the tyres to maintain a balance on the restart. So he'd be told to keep online and keep them as clean as he can, so he can get a good, you know, close run on the next restart.
The interesting thing here is that you can't pit under safety cars. We've been doing that all year.
Oh!
Now that's the reason why. A grass fire on the side of the circuit, that might be as a result of where Craig Lowndes went off. That's at turn 5 there, turn 4, coming around the sweeper, heading up towards the hairpin, which is turn 5. So there's Paul Morris. Just probably got the best view. Best ticket in the house for a spectator, the worst ticket in the house for a driver. So really not sure how that would have started. Obviously something's been dumped on one of the cars that's gone across.
Maybe one of the cars has had a moment and come off the track, and the heat from the car or one of the components on the car has perhaps kicked that off. So the officials there, this will bunch. Now, we are being told that in fact the safety car may have just been placed on standby, not actually brought out onto the track. So we'll try and verify that for you. If it has, it would have bunched the field up, and apparently now it is making its way out onto the track. So,
well, they can get this cleaned up in a hurry. I mean, the thing's almost put out straight away by the time they got it.
Have a drink and a bit of a rest while you're out there.
That's Jeff Gregg talking to the Holden team. Mark Scaife, make sure you have a drink. Keep the fluids. Keep the Monroe safety car. The field is all bunched up.
look at Bernard on the outside there. Bernard has made the most of that.
What about Greg Murphy as well? Greg Murphy's just having a big shot up the back of Jason Bright and Scaife. Then Murphy.
Todd
Ambrose
Kelly
on the inside as well.
Todd Kelly's been swallowed up in all of that. Ambrose comes through. So Ambrose on the fight back now. Back into fourth position for Marcus. Bernard gets shuffled back as well.
Oh, what an incredible restart that was. The Stone Brothers Racing team of Marcus Ambrose and David Bernard really put the squeeze on. But look at Stephen Richards. He's restarting this fight with Marcus Ambrose. And we've got Mark Scaife out the front, keeping clean. Jason Bright. Oh, Ambrose and Bernard, the teammates together.
They're telling Marcus Ambrose on the radio just to take it easy and to settle it down. There's Russell Ingall. What about that charge in car number 8, the Castrol Commodore, from the back of the grid after all those dramas in race 2? Russell Ingall is knocking on the door of the top 10. That's an excellent performance from the Enforcer.
Some big problems there for Simon Wills. There's some smoke pouring out the back of the Cat Ford. So come across the line they go again, and Mark Scaife holds his #1 race position. That was a pretty interesting restart. You saw Greg Murphy take a shot on the outside, and while all that was going on, Marcus Ambrose took one on the inside. So looking up back at Gar Tander's car, you're on board with Russell Ingall. There's the problems for Simon Wills.
Damage to the front left of the car, and the boys trying to determine just what may have caused it. Let's have a look here.
Whoa.
Anthony Tratt tangled up with Paul Romano, was it? Was that Wayne Gardner, the chief, taking some evasive action there?
And then
There's the contact between Tratt and Romano.
So that's just a different angle of the same incident. I mentioned Wayne Gardner, and I mentioned at the top of the show it'll be his last solo drive. I meant this season. I didn't mean that he's bailing out. The third car out of the Stone Brothers Racing will not take part for the rest of the rounds because of this restructure and no pre-qualifying, but Wayne Gardner will return to be part of the endurance races as planned. He'll partner David Bernard, the Queensland 500, and of course Bathurst as well. Now back onto the main straight, 1.1 kilometres long this straight. As you saw on that restart, it's a drag race all the way down. They hit the anchors at about the 150-metre mark, then drop it back to second gear before they push it up here into fourth and fifth and take on turn 4 at around about 150, 160 k's by the time they get through the other end of it.
There was some concern, John, during that safety car period that the actual safety car wasn't travelling fast enough to let these guys keep their cars cool to get enough air through the car itself. What sort of speed should the safety car be doing in a situation like that?
Well, it has a set speed for each circuit, but somewhere between 60 and 80k. And the reason a lot of them are bunching up, it's no different than slowing down, have a gawk on the freeway at exit, and they're probably all driving past that bushfire there. And consequently, Constantine at the back of the field up, few have complained about getting air in the front of their engines, and they're running a bit hot.
Expect this to be a really good sprint to the finish. Just talking to the guys from Dunlop, and they believe that safety car period we just had is just what these tyres need. They'll now get a new lease of life. None of them are blistering, none of them are burning up, and they now appears this new durable Dunlop is holding up in this top-end torture test.
I'll tell you what, Greg Murphy, I was speaking to him, and he was telling me that he'd had some troubles there trying to get the setup of the car right with the tyres, and effectively they seem to be going quicker on him than he'd like. So over the first couple of laps, it was harder for him to go out and make a charge, but at the moment he's all over the back of Jason Bright. We're in for one hell of a finish with Murphy breathing down the neck of Bright, and Bright trying to put the pressure on his teammate in front of him, Mark Scaife.
Main concern for Murphy was after the sprint race yesterday was that it was perhaps wearing out the rears a little too much on the Kmart Commodore, and that was cause for concern for him heading into these longer races today. Now let's have another look at this replay. John Bowe in trouble again.
He's been off there before, but he managed to escape trouble the first time, and he does it by inches the second. Now the first time he just drove straight through those signs. I think he's just lined up that. It must be part of his track map. Take a look at this.
Talk us through it, John.
I think it's a reaction from no cool suit. He's probably just had a bit of a brain fade there, but no, he always had a trouble left front there, and it just steered him straight off. But isn't this race great towards the end with a safety car? I mean, maybe it's taking a leaf out of NASCAR where it needs to bunch the field, make it a little bit more exciting after these pit stops.
Certainly got a spectacle on our hands. This is the view out the back of the Pertec Ford. You're looking at Todd Kelly in the second of the Kmart Commodores. Kelly right now in 6th position, Ambrose in 5th, Stephen Richards in 4th. So hasn't this leaderboard changed dramatically after that safety car pulled off in this pack I'm referring to?
Bit of panel damage there on the left-hand side of the Pertec Ford Falcon of Marcus Ambrose. So that's 5, 6 and 7, Ambrose, Kelly and Bernard, and then there's a couple of others right behind them tagging along too. Everybody's lining up for a top 10 finish here, but only 10 will fit in. So it's going to be an interesting sprint to the finish, and as these tyres start to wear out, the drivers will tell you that it's like driving on marshmallows basically. The car skids all over the place, and you can just imagine that with a V8 supercar and 1.3 tonnes of incredible muscle car and all the weight and speed that goes with it. Imagine trying to pilot that around on marshmallows. The differences in lap times between Ambrose and Todd Kelly over the last 5 laps. On lap 32, Kelly was under by 7/100ths of a second. Lap 31, he was right on his tail but over, and so they're playing a nice little game of cat and mouse in that, 5 and 6th.
It's amazing. Grant was saying before there about the state of the tyres, just how that safety car would help them in terms of tyre life. But on a day like today, there's absolutely no cloud cover. If there was the slightest hint of cloud cover, that can actually give you an extra 1/10 of a second, can't it? It can actually help the tyre itself. The heat drops down on the track temperature, and it can provide a bit of assistance that way.
Well, it can, but I think in Darwin, it's just been proven in all the races the Dunlop has been durable enough to do those 35 laps. Guys that pitted on lap 3 have been able to cruise to the end. What we're seeing now as a result of that safety car some exciting racing, and I think they're really trying for position now because they've bunched. They've got something worthwhile to have a go at.
It's a pretty impressive test, I guess, for Dunlop straight out of the box. Wasn't it last lap now, but when you consider we've had Adelaide, Phillip Island, which is notoriously tough on tyres, and then this round here, it's been a couple of rounds straight up, which have been a pretty solid test for their debut in V8 supercar racing as a controlled tyre supplier.
Well, yeah, obviously to get their sort of temperature like this early in their introduction to their first year in supercar racing, they can sort of pretty rest on their laurels now for the rest of the year because they've had the extreme reasonably, well, they're going to experience a reasonably cold Canberra. They've had the maximum here at Darwin. But Scaife's obviously now just protecting his line a little bit from Bright, which is allowing a frustrated Murphy to get a sniff at Bright.
Here's what's happening behind, though. Look at Todd Kelly. Under pressure from Bernard as well, and Bernard gives him a tap. That's up into Hidden Valley for the final time, so options for Todd Kelly. Fast running out.
Yeah, that's position 6, 7, and 6 and 7 that you're looking at there. So you've got Marcus Ambrose in front of Todd Kelly, and then Ambrose's teammate putting the pressure behind Todd Kelly. They come around the final turn. Mark Scaife is going to lead another Holden 1-2 for the weekend. The Holden racing team has done it again. 8 out of 10 race victories. 4 out of 4 round victories. Mark Scaife is Mr. Unbeatable. Wow, what a finish. What about the numbers that this man is stacking up? They're just absolutely incredible. 8 out of 10 race victories that he's claimed. In the 2 that he didn't win, he finished second. Mark Scaife is now the first man in 25 years of touring cars to win the first 4 rounds straight. Well done. The first 4 rounds straight. It's an incredible statistic. The last man to do it was Alan Moffat. He did it in 1973 and 77. Now there you go. You just heard the word from the Holden racing team. Basically, that's the story of the round so far. Sloppy pit stop will cost you dearly. Mark Scaife is our winner here at Hidden Valley. He wins race 3 and he also wins overall. These are the results from our 100-kilometre race. The final race. Scaife, Brighton, Murphy 1, 2 and 3. Stephen Richards 4. Marcus Ambrose is the best of the Fords in 5th. Todd Kelly 6th. Bernard and Tander, then Ingle. Brad Jones, another top 10 finish. Glenn Seaton just outside. Stephen Johnson did a great job to move up through the field. He started right back. Jason Marquardt in 13th. 14th is Max Wilson. Neil Crompton, Stephen Ellery, Mark Larkerman holding down a top 20 spot. It was a day of extremes, both in terms of temperature and some of the carnage that we saw, as you can see here, what happened in race 2. But at the end of it all, our winner, Mark Scaife, he's with Barry Sheen.
Mark, amazing. 8 out of 10, and I would imagine this was the hardest weekend of the lot.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's one of those things that we didn't know how good we'd go up here, Barry. The grip level was very low. We're all pioneers with the tyre, and as it turned out, my car probably wasn't brilliant in practice, but it got better and better as the weekend went on, and we changed it last night, and certainly today it's a better toy, so it was a great result.
How do you feel physically? I mean, I can't imagine what it's like in there.
Look, I feel fine physically. It's just bloody hot, mate. I mean, you just can't believe how hot it is in there. It's like a sauna, and you know, we had a fair battle, Bridie and I. So I mean, you know, that's the sort of races that you like to have. I mean, we were dead set at it. If you have a look at the lap times, we were 100%.
Conditions like this, you don't need Jenny Craig, do you?
Well, conditions like this, you don't need to have a battle at the end in the last 5 laps. A safety car, you go on, no. And Jenny Craig, no, not an option.
Doing amazing, guys.
Thanks, Bridie.
Jason Bright, you were right on Mark Scaife's hammer. Did you ever think you had his measure?
I think we had his measure all weekend, and you know, it was just a matter of who led off the line and who didn't stuff up the pit stops like I did. So yeah, you know, full credit to Mark. He's done another faultless weekend. So you know, we'll try again at Canberra.
It's tough when you got a race like that.
It is, mate. And you know, Scaife's no slouch, and he's driving for the best team in the business. So yeah, we've got our work cut out. You know, at least this weekend we're back on the pace. You know, sort of got all the Eastern Creek and Phillip Island and Adelaide woes in our history, and hopefully we can take it on to Canberra and prep for a win.
Good job. I'll let you go dry up.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.